Well, thank you, Pastor Joe, and everybody for coming out. It's, I don't know, everybody's sitting in the back. I feel like I should use mouthwash before I came or something. It's really nice to be here. I actually, this gives me really good memories. Before we moved here, for me to take this job at Habitat, we lived in New Albany, Floyd's Knobs, Indiana, which is just outside of Louisville, Kentucky. And for, I don't know, what was it, 3 or 4 years, Martha and I were a dynamic duo every Wednesday night putting on the Wednesday night meal at our church for, I don't know, 100 to 150, 200 people on a regular basis. She did everything. I just showed up in time to take the credit and I make the salad, you know. But we did it. We had a great time together for a number of years doing this. So it's really nice to see, you know, this still happening places. So, anyways, like Pastor Joe said, my name is Trevor. I'm the CEO here of Indian River Habitat for Humanity. I've been here about 3.5 years. My wife and I have 3 boys. They are 9, 11, and 14. And I've been involved in affordable housing work now for a while, a little over a decade. And it's very interesting. When Joe called me and said, we want you to come do this thing, and I said, well, what do you want me to talk about? Thankfully, you didn't say AI or politics. This is way less scary than either of those things. So we can actually have a good time talking about this. But he said, you know, we want to talk a little bit about your faith and how that informs the work that you do. And so I actually didn't have to think about it very long because I'm blessed with the opportunity to work for an organization that's founded on Christian principles and that continues in our mission statement to talk about how, you know, we put God's love into action every day. And it's not, we don't talk about affordable housing because it's the most important need. We don't talk about it because, you know, it's the thing that is the best way to show God's love to somebody. It's not. That's just the how. We've decided to do it. There are so many different ways to do it. But the fundamental thing that you know that I live by, the reason that I've dedicated my life to service, is this. In the book of Matthew, they asked Jesus, "What's the most important law?" And he said, "To love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. And the second is like it: love your neighbor as yourself." It's very simple. The Bible is really big to be boiled down to something so simple. And if we are adhering to this and we're following this, we're like 90% of the way there, right? We believe in Jesus Christ and the fact that he saved us from our sins. And then we put his love into action simply by loving our neighbor as ourselves. So a little bit about myself. So Joe mentioned I was in the Army. And I joined the Army at the age of 22 as a way to get out of my hometown. And I timed it perfectly, right around the invasion of Iraq. And I spent the next decade or so going back and forth to Iraq and Afghanistan. And because I am so bright, I chose not to join the Air Force or the Navy. I was like, I want to be in the Army. I don't want to shoot big guns and do all sorts of cool stuff. So I spent 3 combat deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan as doing reconnaissance as a cavalry scout, and got to experience some pretty tough stuff. And you know, those things have had a lot of responsibility for the ebb and flow of my faith over the years. But of all the things that I experienced, all the hard things that I experienced, what is so interesting to me is something that happened in my last deployment. So it was around 2011. My unit was tasked with building a new American base in the Arghandab River Valley in southern Afghanistan, near just outside of Kandahar. And of all the things that have stuck with me from those years, the one that has always affected me the most, we had to go around to this area and tell these families, you have 10 minutes to get all your valuables and get out. And they did, and we blew up their houses, all around this huge perimeter. And at the time, it bothered me so much that that's what we had to do, and we had a job, and we did it. And we didn't hurt anybody physically. It was just we were responsible for clearing this area, and so we did that. And despite all the things that I saw, that has stuck with me and bothered me more than anything in all of those years. All the violence, all the tremendous sadness and sorrow experienced in war. It was that one day that has continued to stick with me more than anything else. Well, the Lord has a funny way of working, because after I got out of the military, I started going to school, graduate school, and I was thinking about entering the medical field. I wanted to be an eye doctor. So this is a long story. I'll tell you another time. But I'm not smart enough to be an eye doctor. That's the main issue. But I was working on a master's in anthropology at the University of Louisville, and as a veteran with PTSD, I was really interested in, well, why are so many veterans homeless? Why are so many veterans struggling with their mental health? I kind of understood that part. But I was doing actual ethnographic, qualitative research based on why so many veterans were struggling with homelessness. And so through that research, I was given a job offer. They said, well, hey, you're hanging out in this day shelter every day. Would you like a job? And I said, well, I've got kids and a wife at home. I should probably consider that. Okay. So I did, and I took a job answering the phone and doing intake at the Coalition for the Homeless in Louisville, Kentucky. And that was the start of my journey into the housing field. From there, I did that for a while, and working with unhoused folks is pretty emotionally taxing. And I got a job with the city of Louisville, working in the housing department, administering HUD funding for home repair projects and things like that. I did that for a while, and after I worked on a project with the local Habitat for Humanity chapter there, affiliate there, I went to work as a director of home buyer services, and it was a full circle thing for me, where I was able to finally find something that allowed me to put some of those demons to rest, and to finally be able to build something rather than tear it down. A few years later, I was there about 4 years, to tell you a little bit about how we've ended up here, and the way that God works in people's lives and opens doors for people. I was sitting in bed one night, looking at my phone, and you guys are like, oh, that's not very special. I don't usually take my phone in the bedroom. I usually leave it in the kitchen. But there I was looking at that, and I got a LinkedIn notification. I don't ever get LinkedIn notifications. And it said, here's a job you might be interested in. And it was President and CEO of Indian River Habitat for Humanity in Vero Beach. And I was like, I don't even know where Vero Beach is. I've never heard of it before. We're not like long-time Florida travelers. I had been to Disney World a couple of times as a kid, but that was about it. And so I looked at Martha and I said, hey, look at this. And she's like, you need to apply for that job. And I said, nobody wants me for this job. I'm not gonna bother. And she's like, well, you'll never know if you don't try. So the job closed the very next day, and I had a very busy day. So I went to work, and I worked at meetings all day and was doing all this stuff. About 3:30, she texted me, and she said, did you apply for that job yet? And I was like, boy, if I don't apply for this job, I'll never be able to complain again. So I didn't even have a resume, so I had to go dig through my email and find the resume that I had submitted the last time I had gotten a job. And I had, it was about 3:30, and the job posting closed at 5 o'clock. So I typed something out real quick. I didn't even spell check it, and I sent it off. And I said, well, there, So I got a call the next day, and they said, we'd like to do an interview with you on Saturday. I said, I can't, I'm busy. I got to work on Saturday. How about Monday? Okay, all right, I'm off on Monday. We'll do that. So we did a Zoom interview, and it was I didn't think much of it. I don't even think I dressed up. And I got a call the next day. They said, we'd like you to come to Florida on October the 12th. I said, well, I can't come to Florida on October the 12th. I'm going to California to see my brother. And they said, okay, well, when do you get back? I told them, I said, okay, we'd like to see you here the day after that. I said, okay. So I came down, I interviewed with people like Dave. Don't ever interview with that guy. For about 13 hours we spent here meeting with people, and they fed me constantly throughout the day, which is it's the story of my life. And offered me the job the next day. And so it's an interesting way, and an interesting just little story about how we can try to run away from God's will for our life sometimes, but eventually it's going to catch up to us. And so that's how we ended up here. And it really is my faith journey follows my journey with Habitat very closely. So Habitat is an organization that is founded on Christian principles, and Christian principles that are very simple. The founder, so Habitat was founded in the 1970s at a place called Koinonia Farm in Georgia. Now, Koinonia Farm is outside of a town called Americus. It's very, very rural. And in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, it was the source of a tremendous amount of racial unrest. There was a lot of KKK things happening around there, and influence in that area. And Koinonia Farm actually became the very first planned, racially integrated community in the United States. And they began with one house. And I can't remember the name, but I think it was, they called it something like, Hope for Housing Partnership or something along those lines. And it eventually turned into Habitat for Humanity. And the whole idea was that, the founder, Miller Fuller, said that we might have theological differences or political differences. And we can easily get past those if we simply try to put love into action, right? The hammer is how we do it, right? It's easy. Everybody can swing a hammer. But the idea that if we build homes for God's people in need with the very basic biblical principles of no interest and no profit, then we are doing the Lord's work, and we are able to reach people on an unprecedented level. So I found this quote the other day, actually, which I really liked. And it says, "The Bible teaches us that God is the God of everyone. His love leaves nobody out, and my love shouldn't either." And I think that is a really wonderful quote for how we should live as Christians. It's very simple. Jesus was radically inclusive. And throughout the Bible, all of the heroes of the Bible are incredibly imperfect people, except for one. And it just shows how God can use imperfect people, sinners just like you and me, for his work. And so anyways, we try at Habitat to be like Jesus, radically inclusive. We want to welcome everybody to our work. Doesn't matter if you're white, if you're black, if you're a Republican, if you're a Democrat. All those things don't matter. We welcome everybody. It doesn't matter if you're a Christian, if you're a Muslim, if you're a Baptist, or a Catholic, or Methodist. Everybody is welcome to come, put God's love into action to create a world where everybody has a decent place to live. So that's what we're about. So what everybody wants to talk about is affordable housing. So a couple of the terms as I transition to that. I'm really good at talking about numbers and statistics, and if anything doesn't make sense, feel free to stop me and ask. I'm more than happy to answer those questions. So we hear a lot of words like affordable housing, attainable housing, workforce housing. Those things are interchangeable in many cases, but for our purposes here tonight, we're going to put some definitions on them. So an affordable housing is something that I need, it's something you need, and it's something everybody needs. And we define that by housing costs that are less than 30% of your monthly income. So attainable housing is essentially housing for households that earn up to 120% of the area median income. Now, that is based on the size of the household, the number of people. Single individual, the area median income is much lower than that of a family of 8, for instance, to reflect how families have different requirements of income for living. And then workforce housing, right? A lot of the time that's the same thing as attainable, but it's essentially talking about your middle income workers. When we talk about workforce housing, we're talking about your government workers, your construction workers, police, fire, the folks that are career people. That's what we're talking about workforce housing. Those folks who are working at Piper, right? Teachers working for the school district, all those things. But currently working families who may or may not qualify for public subsidy and public assistance programs. That's something we'll get into in a minute. But just to give you a little bit of a reference point, when I talk about Habitat's work, we generally work with families earning less than 80% of the area median income. For a family of 4, that is $74,400 a year. Now that's changed because we've been in such an inflationary environment. Just 2 years ago, that was $60,000 a year. So those area median incomes are increasing. So I'm going to be really quick about this. The housing market here locally has changed dramatically over the last 6 months. So when I put these slides together, I had used this last fall for a Let's Talk Vero presentation, and this homes for sale under $300,000 was 16. So in just about 6 months, we have increased the stock of available homes tenfold. So what does that tell us? It means that people are not buying houses. Why are they not buying houses? Well, because interest rates are really high, and the prices are still really high, and the insurance is really high. And so even if you can find a house that's a reasonable price, say $250,000 to $300,000, at today's interest rates and with all these other variables in place, normal people, normal working families still cannot afford to buy them. So that is all, you look at the other side of it, from the rental side of things. The average rent in Indian River County right now for a 1-bedroom apartment is $1,867 a month. Now, that's a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment. Okay, so I know I have a family of 5. Please don't ask us to move into a 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. That's not a recipe for success. Your typical 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, the best you're going to find these days is going to be somewhere in the range of $2,200 to $2,500 a month. So families, even dual income families in many cases, are struggling. So last year, earlier this year in February, we did the point in time count, which we do every year. Every governing jurisdiction in the U.S. by HUD order does this point in time count, where we literally go out into the woods and the streets over a 24-hour period, and we count people who are unhoused. So we give a survey to them, we provide them, offer them some services, give them some things. We did it this year. We met some folks who were here at the food pantry and right outside on 15th. And 198 people in Indian River County over that one day. Now, looks like, oh my gosh, that's like a 15% reduction year over year. And the problem is that the sheriff's department went out the day before and cleared out some of the camps and people had hidden and all that. So let's just say that's an accurate number. Those are just people who are living in the woods or on the streets, and it's a fraction of what we count. The other number that we don't talk about, or we don't hear about very much, are those people who we call hidden homeless. Now, hidden homeless are folks who don't have their own place. They don't have even a consistent place to live. They're not necessarily like staying with mom, right? They're couch surfing. They are going from place to place to place to place. We hear all the time about families who, mom and dad are over here, one kid is over here, one kid is over here. Horrible situations. That number is in the thousands of people right now. And that's just what we know about from homeless management information system data. It's in that 2,000 to 3,000 people on a daily basis that are hidden homeless as well, sleeping in their cars, that kind of thing. And then this is, here in Indian River County, the second most expensive housing market in the United States. Now, I know California is really expensive, Denver's really expensive. When compared to average wages, we are the second most expensive market in the nation. We used to be number one, so we're making progress. St. Lucie County is now number one, so we're number two. And then the what we call the housing wage, which is what it costs to rent a one-bedroom apartment at 30% of your income, is $32.31 an hour, which is $67,000 a year. Now, I don't know where those jobs are, but there are not a lot of them around here. A experienced employee at Piper, for instance, talked to a guy yesterday, he's making $22 an hour. He has a wife and a brand new baby. An entry-level teacher makes about $51,000 a year. So these people that we rely on every single day, that we're working with, that we're saying, hey, please teach my kids, they can't afford to live here on their own, unless they're married and have dual incomes. So this chart is roughly 8 years, 9 years of data. And I have data all the way back to 1995, but when I put it in a graph, you couldn't read it. So just bear with me. This shows, the blue line here is the average income for an individual. Now it's gone up over those years. The orange line is the median home price. And you can see that has appreciated at a much higher rate. If you go all the way back to 1995, 30 years ago, the difference between those lines is very close. 1995, you could buy the median home for about 2.5 times the median income. Give or take, depending on the area. About 2.5 times annual salary, you could buy a house. These days, here, it's about 8 times the median income. So we hear all these things like, oh, young people don't want to work. People need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Okay, but it's literally harder now than it was 30 years ago. And that's the reality. So why is that the case? I wish I could tell you that it's just one thing, but it is not. So everybody who owns a home understands that we pay taxes and insurance, and every year those go up and up and up and up and up. Even if you pay your house off, you still have to pay a tremendous amount just for the privilege of living here. Additionally, over the last 17, 18 years, since 2008, we have seen severely reduced production of housing units in general, but especially starter homes. Or starter homes, what we all consider safe, decent, affordable houses. A 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom house that a small family can live in affordably. The large builders in the United States are simply not building them anymore. And what they would consider a starter home is, 3 times as much as a starter home should be. And then the number that just shocks me every time I see it, 20% of the single-family homes in the United States are now owned by a corporation or an investor. So when you walk out here, 1 out of every 5 houses that you come across is not owned by a family that's living there. It is owned by a corporation or somebody who is buying multiple houses for rental, that sort of thing. And so the landscape of housing has really changed over the years. When we talk about rentals, there are a little over 500,000 what we call extremely low-income households in the state of Florida. Extremely low income is like within a percentage of the poverty line. We might say it's 30% of the area median income, something like that. To give you a little reference, for a family of 4, that's earning $32,000 a year. So that's a $15 an hour or below. It's extremely low income, what we say. So that's almost 600,000 ELI households in Florida. There are about 25 affordable and available rental units per 100 ELI households. So for every 100 families that need a place to live, there are 25 that they can afford. And then 82% of those households, which in Indian River County, it's skewed because of the number of high-income earners that we have, but 82% of households in our country are in Florida are spending more than 50% of their income on rent. And then nationally, there is a 7.3 million unit shortage of affordable housing. So, to give you an idea of the difficulty, and a lot of people, if you've owned a home for a long time, or you've been in one area for a long time, you may not have the direct appreciation for how difficult it has become for people to buy a home. So a $300,000 home, which is roughly the least expensive, we're actually seeing a little bit of downward pressure on that. But consider $300,000. An FHA loan, 3% down payment, which is, unless you're a veteran, that is about the best first-time home buyer deal that you will find. Monthly payment is going to be on average $2,600 a month for that house. So in order to be able to afford that with our rule of 1/3 of your monthly income, you have to be making almost $94,000 a year. Now, people who make $94,000 a year are making too much money to qualify for any sort of down payment assistance program, any sort of government subsidy. And so you can see what we have. We've got a missing middle. We have a gap of people from who can afford housing and the available housing that is out there. I was talking to the Veterans Council today, and we said the same thing. We've never really worked with a lot of veterans with home ownership because veterans have the VA loan, which is one of the most wonderful things that the government has ever done, one of the most successful programs the U.S. government has ever done. But veterans are feeling the squeeze now too, because even if they can go out and afford this 100% financing for a home, they still can't afford the monthly payment. So, probably going to stop here in the interest of time, but it's really easy for us to talk about, it's easy for me anyways, I talk about housing with numbers, right? I talk about how many units are we producing, how many housing starts are we having per year, all of these things, this sort of economic data perspective. All that stuff pales in comparison to the fact that real people are living in these houses. It's not about a house. There's one on every corner, they all look the same. But real people need a place to live. And as Christians, we should not accept the fact that everybody doesn't have a decent place to live. We should not accept the fact that people are going hungry. It is our duty as God's people to serve others and to ensure that we are working as best we can to ensure that everybody's got a decent place and a decent shot at life. So, very quickly, just to give you an idea about what we do at Habitat. So we do a number of things. What I always like to say is we give people opportunities. We give people a chance to grow into all that God intends for them. That's what we do. How we do it is through housing. And so we have the traditional Habitat home ownership model, which when people think about Habitat for Humanity, they're like, Jimmy Carter is on a roof in Ecuador, hammering shingles. Okay, that's true, right? And that is part of traditionally how it works. So what we do here locally is we build homes, generally single-family homes, and we provide an affordable mortgage for people who meet our criteria. Those criteria are they have a demonstrated need for housing, which is just about everybody, particularly in this market. They have willingness to partner with us, and that's why we put in sweat equity. And they have an ability to repay an affordable mortgage. Now, our affordable mortgage generally looks like 0 interest for 30 years. It is a payment that is structured to be usually less than 25% of the family's monthly income to give them a chance for, chance to participate in the economy, but also a chance to handle those hits when you've got huge swings in insurance or taxes, those sort of things. And we always like to say it's a hand up and not a handout. We don't give away houses. We don't build houses for poor people. We're not doing those things. Those are all misconceptions. We don't only build houses for African American single moms or whatever. I hear all of it. We build for everyone. Just like we welcome everybody. I'm really glad to see some folks from Christ by the Sea here. They are very regular, faithful volunteers with us every other week or so. And we welcome everybody to volunteer. We welcome everybody to participate in our programs. We also, we're building some stuff around here. We've got some new projects coming, 150 homes planned for the next 5 or 6 years. These are just some pictures. June 12th, we break ground at Gifford Gardens on 40th Avenue. I'm really excited about it. That project has aged me. I'm only 23. We also have a critical home repair program. So every year we do a little north of 100 homes through that program where we take homeowners who are in need of affordable home maintenance, things like roof replacements, air conditioner replacements, accessibility, things like wheelchair ramps, bathroom remodels so that people can get into the shower as they get older. What we see is even though someone may have owned a home for a long time, as people get a little bit older, their income starts to drop off, right, as their house starts to fall apart. And so one of the major causes of derelict housing is that people don't have the money to properly maintain it. And so we work with them to provide essentially what I call as a microfinance program where we are offering access to capital that doesn't cost them anything. So we may be doing a combination of down payment from the homeowner. We use philanthropic dollars, donated money or grant money to help pay down that cost, and then whatever's left is an interest-free loan for a couple of years at a very, very affordable payment. And then this year we've actually done so much hurricane relief work. We've done more than 40 homes, complete renovations in many cases, to help people who were affected by tornadoes during Hurricane Milton, who were either underinsured or had no homeowners insurance at all. I'm not going to play this video, but one of those ones that is special to me. I don't know if any of you know Jim and Joyce Nance. They went to church here for a number of years. Their house was destroyed by a tornado. It ripped the entire back of the house off, peeled the roof back, shattered glass. They were both injured significantly in the tornado. And they were immediately, obviously, displaced from their house. They had to move in with their daughter. And he said, they lived there for 55 years. And finally, the homeowner's insurance went from $2,000 a year to $3,000 a year, to $6,000 a year, to $9,000 a year. He said, I've got to roll the dice. They couldn't afford it anymore. Even though they owned the home, the insurance was too expensive. So they rolled the dice the first year and they won, and they rolled the dice the second year and they lost. But what we were able to do is go in there with grant funding that we received from a variety of sources. The Johns Island Foundation, the United Way here, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the American Red Cross. We were able to go in, completely fix that house up, and they've been able to move back in. So at 89 years old, they're able to live out the remainder of their lives, independently in their homes. That's what it's all about. It's not just about building a new house or about creating, new apartments for people, but it's making sure that people can continue to live with dignity and continue to live in a place that they can afford without spending, all of their money to do so. So that's the overview. You got questions?
Yeah. Yes. First of all, thank you so much for that presentation. I hope it's so very important for people to hear these figures because people don't realize that people who can't afford houses are not just those who are, we always get this picture of like the low-income person like on the street. It's teachers, doctors. So when you're going to the restaurant, somebody's serving you coffee, that person may be literally living in her car. So when you tip, if she had a bad day because she didn't sleep well in her car, give her a little more tip. If she's having a bad day and she doesn't treat you well, it's probably because her back hurts. sleeping in their car. So think about how you tip, things like that. But thank you for your presentation. So I usually have kind of a round table, but tonight I don't have too many questions on my mind, but you may have questions on your mind. So what questions, does anybody have questions to ask? All right, good to see you, Don. Coming to you, all right.
I had to move out of my house because I couldn't afford the repairs and the mortgage. I didn't know I could maybe go through a program to help, because I tried to work with people for roofing and plumbing and they don't take payments. So now I live with my daughter and her husband, and that house needs a lot of repair. So with all three of us in there with income, would we still be able to get help with the repairs?
We'll look at it. We would be more than happy to take a look at it. And, even if, let's just say, you are over our income guidelines, one of the things that we also do a lot of is we make sure we can help people get what they need through contractors who are not gonna, take your wallet while you're not looking. It's a huge thing. There are some of these shady people in the construction industry, and people who are trying to take advantage of you. We had a roof replaced on our street 2 weeks ago. I've been getting 10 calls a day of people that are like, we'd like to come by and do a free inspection. Well, we both know how that inspection is going to turn out, right? And so even if you don't have the money to afford it, they'll sue the insurance company for you and make sure that everybody pays for it. Right, that's how we are in this issue that we are in, is that we've had so much fraud around the insurance industry and roofing and all that over the years. Fortunately, the legislature made some changes a couple years ago, which we think are going to start to have an impact, but we all know that the prices never come down, right? They go up and then they stay there at a bare minimum. But they're,
Sorry, Trevor.
No, and certainly in your case, we would be more than happy to look at it and see if you're within the guidelines. We can certainly help.
One of the things, Trevor, I think the county also may have some services, especially for our senior citizens through the senior department, the senior services. Like I know one gal who got, I think, a new air conditioning through a grant through the county level. So my assumption is, even if you Habitat can't help, you know who to call in those situations. So it's not just, Habitat, it's Trevor knows 10 other people who know 10 other people that can get you some kind of service as well. So you get around it.
Yeah, that's totally true. And so one of the things that I think we're really good about is recognizing that we can't do it on our own. So, we are a pretty decent sized nonprofit, and we do a lot of work. However, when you look at how big is the problem and how much can we do, we can't do it on our own. And so we're all about partnerships. So if we can connect you with the services from somewhere else, we will certainly do that. Now, a lot of times going through county programs or government programs, they can be slow, and that can really be difficult. And we as an independent company can be a little faster. But certainly, come to us and we'll see how we can help you.
Thank you. Any questions? Oh, Les.
I've thought about this for many years. Do you ever have anyone donate homes to Habitat for Humanity?
We do. That is one of those things. Legacy giving is actually really important for us. We have often people who leave a piece of their estate to Habitat for the future and homes as well. It doesn't happen that often, but it does occasionally. Actually, the most common way that happens is folks that we have built a home with who have lived there for a long time. They pass away. They often leave the house back to us in the will, or they'll leave it to their kids, and the kids will say, "We don't need this house. We'd like to give it back to Habitat." So that kind of thing happens quite frequently, actually. But if that's something that you are interested in, we can help set that up. So no, it is. We do.
We get ready to leave. We'll give it.
Sounds good.
haven't got that data set.
I hope not.
Any other questions? Besides helping, oh, do you have a question?
Yes.
Hold on,
Why did you
Susan.
put an
Hold on.
application in for assistance?
Hold on, Susan, hold on.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, we can hear you. Go ahead.
I was just wondering how you put an application in for assistance.
Okay, so do you know where the Restore is on US 1? Okay, so if you pull into the Restore parking lot and keep going, you get to the back of the property, there's a Burnham Center. If you just go in there, you can let the folks know what you're interested in, and they will walk you through the process.
So that
You
brings,
can also do it online. You can go to the irchabitat.org and do that.
so that brings us to kind of another thing. We have these large issues of housing, call it housing crisis. So what can we do, or what do you do, or what do people do to kind of help the county figure out how to invite developers who are going to develop more starter homes? Like, does the county have some kind of like apparatus, or do we have to lobby? I mean, what do we do? How can we make a change in our own county?
That's a loaded question. All right, so when you talk about housing, okay, there's one of the reasons. So let's talk about some numbers. So in 2008, when we had the financial crash around deregulation of the mortgage markets and all that stuff, what happened is the construction industry was completely decimated. So we went from a couple million houses a year in production, or housing units per year in production, to like 500,000 or 600,000 in 2009, and it has slowly regrown to 1.4 million last year in the U.S. Now, in order to keep up with population growth, we need to produce 3.3 million housing units per year in the country. That's just to keep things where they are, based on when things fall apart and are torn down, the population growth and all of that. So we're moving in the wrong direction. Even if we build more, we're headed in the wrong direction. Now there's a lot at play here, but one of the things that has happened is over the course of those years, we see constant overregulation, and that happens at every single level. So at the federal level, you've got all of these rules that come into place. Did you know there are 58 different types of environmental review that can be done depending on what your housing project looks like? Now, environmental review isn't just looking at it and being like, no frogs. It can be hundreds of pages of research and documentation that goes into that. On top of all sorts of land use and zoning rules and regulations that happen at the federal level, they're pushed down to the state level. Then the state is like, those aren't enough rules, we need to make our own. And so they make their own, and they push those down to the local level. And the local level is like, well, we want to be cool, so we're going to put those into the code as well. And so you end up with all of these rules and all of these regulations that, in order to fight through to get anything done, they don't even work together. So I'll give you an example. So we're about to break ground on a property in Gifford called Gifford Gardens. It used to be an old apartment complex that was torn down about 14 years ago. We have been trying for 3 years to redevelop this parcel. It's 3.3 acres. Now 3.3 acres zoned for 10 units per acre, sounds a lot like 33 units. With all of these rules and regulations and things put on top of each other, we will get 14 homes on that piece of property. And even worse, it took 3 years to get to the point where we're ready to finally put a shovel in the dirt. And so these things are what are preventing affordable housing from being built. And so when you have, it's very difficult to get a unit produced, even at no profit, which is what we're doing, that a normal working family can afford. Let alone if you're a for-profit developer, which is the vast majority of them, they need to turn a profit. We understand that's how it works. So they become even more expensive. Even when they're building at scale, it becomes more expensive. So it's really, really difficult. So then what happens is at the federal level or the state level, they say, okay, well, people can't afford these houses, so we have to subsidize them. So they put subsidy programs in place, like community development block grants or HUD programs like Home and SHOP and state programs like the SHIP program, which is that county program we talked about for home repair. And we use SHIP dollars to help most Habitat families. Well, now you're talking about, it still costs a lot because of the overregulation. It's just that, the homeowner's not paying it now. It's all of us are paying it now. And now we're in a situation where we have so much chaos in Washington that this new omnibus bill that they're passing is cutting 100% of the funding through home, 100% of the funding through community development block grants, 100% of the money through the SHOP program, all of these federal subsidy programs that are what are relied on to build affordable units. So housing will still keep getting built because people need to make money. It's just that it will become less and less and less affordable. And it all comes down to the amount of time that it takes and the amount of regulation that is involved. And so what can individuals do? Well, you can vote. That's a big one. Elections have consequences, and we're dealing with it right now. We've been dealing with it for the last 250 years. But they do. Elections absolutely have consequences. The other thing you can do is call your county commissioners, call the mayor or the city council members of Vero Beach. Let them know that, hey, you have land just sitting around. Why can't that go for affordable housing? Right? Why can't we make that available, legitimately make it available for affordable housing? Hey, why does the process take so long to get plans reviewed? Why aren't those going to the front of the line? That sort of thing. It's about making your voice heard. So if you really care about it, you got to get involved. That is the thing. It doesn't get better on its own. The general trend of these things is that they only get worse, unfortunately. Not to sound like a stooge, but they really only get worse with time. And so that's what I say.
Trevor, what advice would you give to your grandchildren? It seems like it's going to be a very scary situation, depending on what their income is, and and what age do you help these people out? And
Well, that's a really interesting question. I actually think about this a lot because I have 3 boys at home who are 9, 11, and 14, and I do not want them to live with us permanently. so I've learned through this work, I've learned some pretty interesting things. And when I was in Louisville, I was the director of home buyer services at Habitat. And we worked with a tremendous number of, more than half of our families that came through our program that were immigrants and refugees, primarily from Africa, East Africa, and the Middle East. So we had a lot of Syrian refugees from the civil war there. We had a lot of families from Somalia, Darfur, Ethiopia, places like that. And the thing that we saw, it was very interesting because it was like 50-50. These immigrant families would almost always immediately financially qualify. Why? They are allergic to debt, right? Culturally, they're like, we don't borrow money. We don't borrow money and our mattress is full of hundreds, Americans are addicted to debt. We borrow for everything. You can't go to Sam's Club to buy groceries without getting a credit card offer, right? And so the biggest things are people need to stay away from debt, and young people need to pursue education that's going to pay, right? So I believe this push away from college is faulty logic. I believe college is important, but I think that people need to pursue career fields that have a future, and that's what I would say. I think that we need to be teaching kids from a very young age financial literacy. And I don't mean the stuff that, like our 8th grader, he just graduated 8th grade, he had a basic financial literacy course in the 6th grade, and they actually taught them how to balance a checkbook. That's a little outdated. We don't need to do that anymore. We don't need things like that. We need understanding of how much money do you make, understanding of what are the traps, where do you get, why are 21-year-old kids going out buying a new car, that kind of thing, I drove a hoopty till I was like 30-something. But I think that that financial literacy piece is so important. And our system as Americans is set up to consume. We have to buy everything. We have to buy the latest and greatest. And by the way, you can borrow money to do it. It's such a trap. And so it's one of the ways that as a nation, and I believe it is intentional, we are setting our young people up for failure. I know that I grew up in a non-financially, high-functioning household. My wife did as well. And when we became adults, we didn't know what to do. And it took a lot of years of hard lessons. And it wasn't until we really started to decide, like, oh, we got to do something here. We got all the student loan debt. We've got all these things. And we got 5 degrees between the two of us or whatever it is. But it's not paying for all the student loan debt and the cars and all this stuff. And so we need kids to be intentional with their finances from a very, very young age. I think that is what it takes. You still can go out and get a decent job and manage to afford to live. You still can, and I believe that you still will be able to, as long as people understand where the money's coming from and where it's going.
That is a great note to end on. Thank you for that. We thank you for your time tonight, Trevor.